Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's the Full 40 with Chris and Rob, part of the Stay Tuned Network, brought to you by Nova Insider. We are back. It is January 16th, Sunday evening, 8:30 p.m. Most of college basketball is done for the day. The Eagles lost. The Cowboys lost. The NFC East is out of the playoffs.
That was quick.
Very quick. So here we are tonight. We're following an absolute evisceration of Butler. What I read on Twitter was the largest margin of victory for Villanova in their Big East history. So
Yikes.
I don't know. I didn't fact check that, but it was a tweet and I am regurgitating it. So therefore I could be just spreading misinformation. But
It wouldn't be surprising. I mean, 40 points against anybody is impressive. Like if we beat Mount St. Mary's by 40, it's like, oh wow, that was a big win against a nobody. 40 points against Butler. It's like, ooh, Butler, that bus ride or plane ride back to Indiana is going to be a little rough. But yikes.
But before we get into it, Rob, there's some accountability that I have to hold you to.
Ooh, what is that?
You said on the last podcast, you promised our listeners that you would have Woodford Reserve on you.
Oh, I don't. I can go get some.
So you lied.
I lied. I can go get some. We can pause the podcast and I can get some.
No, I think we can press on without it. We got a lot to accomplish here. I, for one, am still in the middle of an ice cold, crisp, refreshing Diet Coke. So I am continuing my dry January.
I thought you were going to say an ice cold, refreshing, dry January, and I was like, it is quite cold right now. So
yeah,
I wasn't going to repeat that.
It is quite cold.
It's not great.
Snowing outside as we speak, but snowing outside, but Nova was on fire versus Butler today. I love that line. I love that line. Oh my God. Every announcer ever has always used that line. It's cold outside, but it's hot in here.
Yeah, that's very true.
So here we are. Butler, we beat 82-42. If you just remove the first half of Villanova today, Villanova would have won 43-42.
Not bad. Not too bad.
So that just tells you everything you need to know about what happened in the Butler game today. We told you Butler sucks. And at the Wells Fargo Center, it's not going to go well for them. And that's what happened.
Unfortunately, the Butler way did not have any bearing on this game whatsoever.
I got to be honest with you. I'm fucking over the whole Butler way thing. Like, I'm over it. Butler is the team, like every game, their strategy is like the strategy that a 14 seed rolls out to play a 3 seed. That's every time Butler's ever played any opponent ever. It's like 14 seed mentality. That's like
very true.
The approach that they take to every game. And I'm growing tired of Butler. Like early on when they joined the Big East, I was like, oh, Hinkle, that's cool. They had just come off of 2 national championship appearances. Early on, they made a Sweet 16. And I was like, oh, Butler, nice. Like they're really helping us out here in this conference. Now I'm just like, you're just annoying. You suck. Like, you suck. And then on top of you sucking, you beat us at Hinkle a lot. So it's very frustrating to have them in the conference.
It's true. I was going to make some comment about maybe they've never been a high seed, so I just had to check it. They were a 4 seed as recently as 2017, which I didn't realize. But aside from that, they've been a 5 seed twice, and that's it. Like, that's the highest they've been. So that mentality is not wrong, just because, like, that's what their history is.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't stop. That's the Butler way. Hey, we're the underdog, and we're going to fight you as such. So anyway, we saw it. Didn't work.
Let's talk a couple things about the game. So first thing first, you had to notice it the second you turned the game on. Finally, I don't know why it took a bajillion years to do this, but we have our own court for the Wells Fargo Center.
Yes.
Like not the Sixers court with a Villanova logo slapped on it. It was actually a real Villanova basketball court that is very much aligned with what is in the pavilion. And it looked glorious. It looked like we belonged there.
It's a nice change for sure. And
Yeah.
I think it was the first game. Was it the first tailgate? I think I saw something on Instagram about this too. It was like the first time like Villanova fans were tailgating again, or I don't know what it was. But
it's the first time we played there in like 2 years. I don't think we played there during the pandemic last year.
oh shit, is that right? Wow.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we were there. So
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So it looked awesome. It looked cool to have them there. Definitely cool to have fans in the stands. That being said, they were quiet for most of the game because we were immediately blowing them out. It was like the game started and we were blowing them out.
Yeah.
So a couple things that I always want to bring up. What I loved about this game was that we were able to get deep into the bench pretty early because we were blowing them out as previously stated. So as a result, a lot of guys got a lot of minutes. Even Nana Njoku even got 4 minutes. Trey Patterson got 7 minutes. Trey Patterson had more minutes than Chris Archidiakono.
Yikes. That things have shifted quickly for Chris in a good way from our perspective.
Yeah.
But yes.
And then the only starter who played over 30 minutes was Eric Dixon. So good to see. Antoine gets 19, Longino chips in 17. So you get a balanced opportunity for people to get out there and play. You saw Trey Patterson had 5 points by the end of it. Still obviously not getting a ton of points from our bench, but everyone looked good today. It's hard to take an 82-42 win and say, oh, who looked bad?
Yeah, no, it's very true. Though I will point out,
I know where you're going. I know where you're going with this.
I know. I don't want to say it. I hate being right about stuff, but Slater's still a bit MIA on the box score. 2 points today, 3 points against Xaiver. It's very much becoming a narrative. And again, as you pointed out, the scoring is rounding out and it's becoming pretty clear that we've got Colin, we've got Justin kind of as we expected. Dixon seems to really be stepping into this third player role, which I would not in a million years have expected at the start of the season. So point being, everybody else is kind of filling the gaps that we expected Slater to see. Obviously, we need him on the defensive end, but I'm just getting to the point where as we head into each of these games, I'm not really ultimately expecting a whole lot from Slater. And this has been against good competition, against bad competition. So it seems to be a bit more consistent than I would have liked to see at this point. But alas, here's where the team has changed over time. This team has evolved, which as a casual fan, that's exciting to me. I like seeing the team do different things. It just kind of keeps me on edge a little bit and frankly makes this podcast a little bit more interesting as well.
That's definitely true. So thank God that they're playing differently for the content.
Yes, exactly.
All for the content. I appreciate
all for the content. That's right.
Look, Slater's been banged up. We have known that for at least a couple weeks now, that Slater's been banged up. But I have to tend to agree with you at this point. I'm like, I've been taking the bullets for Slater for quite some time on this podcast with you. And I have to say, it's time for him to turn it around. If he wants the continued defense that I've been running for him.
Yeah.
That being said, I still am not we were right before we jumped on, we were saying oh, I understand why he starts. I don't think I would take him out of the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Because of defense length, etc. So there's a lot of reasons for him to continue to start. There's a lot of reasons to continue to bring Antoine and Caleb off the bench.
Yes.
So all of those reasons still exist, and I still wouldn't change the lineup at all, at least from the starter lineup. But you do want to see Slater start to contribute more. And I think the issue is his aggressiveness on the offensive end, and specifically around shooting the ball. He started the season shooting the ball really hot.
Yep.
He got not hot, and seems to have kind of lost his confidence. Now, opponents are stepping out on him. He's trying to make some drives sometimes. A lot of times he can be effective when he pushes the ball, but he's not getting open looks, and I'm just not sure why that is. It's a lot has to do with kind of his role in the offense, which is kind of fourth, fifth
Yeah, I was going to say it's
Colin
very much fallen down the pecking order.
Yeah, it has. Colin obviously is great. Moore's obviously great. And Dixon has emerged as this go-to guy. We kind of have a high-low game going on with Dixon down low. And what's happened is kind of taking points and opportunities and shots away. So yeah, Slater is definitely, I hate nitpicking after an 82-42 win, but Slater is definitely someone who you want to see be able to chip in more. That being said, he didn't take a shot today. He didn't take a field goal. He didn't make an attempt. He hit his 2 free throws. So that's it. It's weird to see that happen. It's weird for a guy to take no shots. So we have another player to talk about. We'll get to them after the Xaiver game. Yeah. But let's jump into that.
Let's talk Xaiver. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we need to belabor the Butler point at all. It was just absolutely crushed them. So
stop that.
All right. The game of the week this week was obviously versus Xaiver in Cincinnati. And kind of became another, similar to the last game we played against them, kind of became a tale of two halves. We looked every bit like the Big East favorite, runaway Big East favorite, playing this ranked opponent at their place and running them out of their gym in the first half, only to go ice cold down the stretch in the second half. And forgive me if you've heard this before, almost lose as a result of playing terrible down the stretch in the game. Very interesting thing. Look, here's what I'll say. Big difference is obviously that we won the game. Like it's kind of weird to say that, but it is a really big difference, because when we were not able to close the door against UCLA and Purdue early in the year, we did not make free throws. We did not make clutch buckets. We didn't get stops when we needed to get stops. This time was different. We got the stops that we needed to get. We made free throws. The team went 20 of 21 from the free throw line in the Xaiver game.
Insane.
That's insane. We missed 2 free throws in the last game, 2 games.
I was going to say, can we take a moment on the free throws? Because the run that the team has been on, not just the past 2 games, but I think it's probably like the past 4 or 5, where we've missed 1 or 2 free throws each game, is phenomenal. We should have run the stats. If we were a better podcast, we would have run the stats. I do not remember a time in my Villanova fandom where we have gone this length of time with that hot of a free throw streak. We just can't miss from the line. So look, even if the threes aren't falling as much as we'd like them to, which we'll get to in a couple minutes, knowing that we have won the inside game, which we should also talk about, the fact that we've been working the ball inside way more, and we've been able to convert at the line, makes you feel a lot more comfortable, certainly as you get into March, knowing that you have a couple different ways to score beyond just a 3-point shot, which we had harped on the team about just, I don't know, a few weeks ago, the fact that we were one-dimensional, and we seem to be building some other dimensions in, which is nice to see.
The other thing that's happening is that we're getting to the free throw line a lot more because we're forcing it. But that's, again, part of our 3-point discussion that we're going to get to in just a minute. So I'm going to hold off on that point. The thing is, and I said this, the difference is that we won the game, and it's like, it sounds like hilarious because it's just like, well, yeah, like you're happy because you won, but like, because of the context of giving up big leads late in games previously, that's now became a monkey on the back. In a weird way, I'm almost glad that the game played out like that. And if you actually were on Twitter, Daniel Oshefu was tweeting about it. Alan Ray was tweeting about it, said it was good that the game played out like that because we got the dub, but also surrendered a lead. So there was coaching to happen out of the game. And also we won. So like, it was kind of one of those things where like you escape, get an away win. A win versus a ranked opponent on the road is awesome, right? Like that goes a long way on the resume, and Xavier's resume is good. So all of that is good. So like, my point is, get the monkey off the back. Because we won, I'm kind of happy it played out the way it did. I will be remiss not to point out, though, that in that game, we talked about Butler, how Jay went big and got the whole deep bench in there, etc. In this game, Jay tightened it up. And even in a game in which in which Samuels was hurt and fouled out with like 5-6 minutes left. Even in a game where like Slater and Moore were still dealing with injuries, the bench went to like 6.5 guys, 7 guys. Antoine played 14 minutes. Daniels played a lot at 31 minutes because Samuels wasn't in.
Yeah.
But Longino had a very short leash. And Archie Diacono played for 1 inbounds pass. Yeah, so it was like, which is weird because he had to inbound the ball in a very tight situation at the very end of the game. And that was his first time touching the ball in the game. I don't know about that. Yeah. But that all being said, Jay did get tight with that lineup. When we had that 17-point lead, might have been nice to get a little bit more guys in there for the stretch run, but alas.
I was thinking the same, like when it was happening too. I was like, why haven't we seen more Longino early on? Like everything was working so well. And then you knew as things started to tighten up in the second half, I was just like, there's no way he's going to get on the court at this point, which I will say, it's been great to see Jay generally expand the bench. As we've talked about, it seems to be pretty clear kind of where this lineup is going to fall out moving forward. I don't think we're going to see much shifting. It's just a matter of, at this point, how many minutes can Longino regularly get up to? And while I've been pretty negative in terms of the other guy's ability to break in and actually carve out a role, I think there is room for Longino to jump this up to regularly 10 minutes or so.
Yes.
And I think Jay's, trying to make that effort. So while he did tighten it a bit against Xaiver, I think going forward, you're going to expect to see Longino inch up. I will say, I think it's going to be a general inching up. Like you're not really going to feel it. I think it's going to be, oh, he's averaging 5 minutes. Oh, he's averaging 6 minutes. He's averaging 7 minutes. And then we're going to get to March and you're going to be like, oh, he's averaging like 9-10 minutes a game. Okay, interesting. All right. I didn't notice that happen. But I think that's ultimately what you're going to see. And that's going to be healthy for this team. And Arch, I think he's going to continue to be in that kind of 3-4 minute range where, hey, we're real short on ball handlers or something, and we just need somebody in there, and Jay's going to dump him in.
And the other thing I'll say is, just to be 100% clear, like, I don't expect Longino to play when the game's getting tight down the stretch. My point is not that. No, you live and die with your guys, with your starters in the tight parts of those games, right?
Totally.
Like, it's not like, oh, we're surrendering the lead and now put Longino in. No, I don't want that at all. I want the starters in plus Daniels when we're getting down to the stretch. I just want those guys to be fresh.
Yes.
When it comes down to that time.
That's
said. That's kind of the point.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to, let's just touch on the narrative there. Does the bench minutes still classify as a narrative, or is that the first narrative that has been squelched? Like, are we past that is that an early season narrative that we've now moved on from?
Ooh, it's a good question. I think we're about there. So if I look at, the proportion of total minutes that are played by our bench in the game. So you've got 5 times 40, you've got 200 game minutes to go around. I think we said the average across the country was something like 30% or something like that of the minutes ultimately go to the bench. So that would mean you've got
60 minutes that go to the bench.
The 60 minutes going to the bench, which I don't think we're at right now. Just looking at, we've got Caleb. No, we're pretty short. So I think it's still a bit of a narrative. I think we're still a little bit short. I think it's a lighter narrative for sure as we've switched who's coming off the bench and how much they're playing. We're getting that worked out. But it's still a narrative in my books. We'll give it another couple of weeks, but I think we're moving off of it.
I think we are moving off of it. I think we're close to closing the book on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something that I think Brian is going to love, our producer, Brian. I think that the narrative fully goes away when even Patterson gets like 3 minutes a game, 3-4 minutes a game.
So it'll never go away then.
It might not. But like, that's the one. Brian, chime in here. Is that what you're looking for? Are you looking for Patterson to play a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm probably the biggest Patterson guy out there of Patterson, New Jersey, which is the town named after him, where he's from. No, it's just he's the only player now that I think any fans had any expectation to play this year.
That's true.
Probably to the point where he's not going to get minutes, but we do have depth now with Antoine, Daniels, Arch. Those guys are getting minutes. So,
but there's no reason he should play over Longino, because Longino played quarterback in high school, so he's got that football toughness. I don't know if you know that.
We don't know about Patterson's toughness, but I do.
That's true. We don't know.
A high school football coach, a teacher might come out. Maybe he was a UFC boxer. Remember the old Javon Pinkston adage that he was a boxer in Brooklyn.
Oh man, what Brian's talking about, there was an article that came out about Longino being this quarterback or this like star on the football team, etc. And what we've learned is that it's a questionable source.
Yeah,
it's what we've learned.
Yeah,
that's all we'll say about that. We're not going to go too much deeper into that, but from what I've heard is that that story might have been embellished a little bit.
Hat tip to Longino. Longino's not the one out there pushing this narrative.
No,
by the way, this is a media narrative that is just playing out. Like somebody's like, it's a football thing. Like he's football toughness. Every announcer says it. It's clearly in their talking points. People wrote articles about it. Whatever. To his credit, Jordan is not the one doing it. But we're out here. We're the media. We're pushing it too. Jordan Longino and his toughness. You can't keep him off the court. God,
just comes from all those years playing lots of varsity football.
Yeah.
All right.
He's an all-star.
Let's move on. I want to talk I'm going to put something into the narrative category here.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a longer, somewhat discussion about it. Okay. Jermaine Samuels. Okay. Jermaine poured in quite a bit today over Butler, but I don't really put a lot of stock in that. 14-5 over Butler. He goose egg.
I put in 12-6 against Butler. So what are you gonna do? It's not that impressive.
He goose egged versus Xaiver. Now he was hurt and he did foul out. Had a really tough game against Xaiver. It was pretty bad. He had 5 rebounds, so good on that, I guess. You didn't have a total cardio game like Danny Green had the other day. But that being said, Samuels has kind of been like, what's going on there? There's been like, I feel like there's been a lot of games where you've turned around and says like, what's Samuels doing? And then you turn around, he's got like 10-6.
There are also games where Samuels turns around and says, what am I doing too? He doesn't know either half the time.
And I'm trying to understand kind of like, okay, why isn't Jermaine Samuels being like a clear second, third option on this team? Like, where is that? Like, he needs to be that guy. I came into this year and I said Jermaine Samuels was the biggest returnee to this team. Is the most important returnee to this team. Obviously, I respected Colin and his contribution. I said Colin was going to be the best player, but I thought Jermaine Samuels was going to be the most important because of the position that he plays doesn't offer a lot of depth. I still hold to that to a degree because he does add the boards. He does add the defensive intensity, boxing out, does the little things, does the garbage work. But I'm looking for him to be more than a garbage man, okay? He is a super senior. He needs to do more than this. What's going on?
Jermaine Samuels is the consummate X factor. You literally never know what you're going to get. I'm pretty sure Jermaine's family doesn't know if he's going to show up to Christmas or not. And he just like pops up and they're like, oh, Jermaine came today. All right, cool. Like just in every facet of his life. We've been saying Jermaine's an X factor for like 3 years on this podcast. And every year the narrative has been, oh, if Jermaine goes from X factor to like solid regular contributor, this team's ceiling is like Final Four, and it hasn't happened.
And it's the same narrative. We're the same narrative.
But it's like he's not gonna fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, I'm a fucking idiot. Like I'm not getting fooled this time.
I'm a fucking idiot. Yeah, I'm a fucking idiot. I'm still buying it. I'm still buying this narrative, Rob.
I'm God. Like, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
No, I have proof.
There's no proof.
I've pulled statistics. I have data. Okay. I have data. Here we go. I am going to call this out, even though this feels like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
With Jermaine Samuels, because it is. Jermaine Samuels is ready to bust out. Okay. And here is my proof. I'm going to lay out the evidence. Okay. right around February, every single year, Jermaine Samuels turns it on. The light bulb goes on, and all of a sudden, Jermaine graduates from that X factor level a little bit above that. And he turns it on every single year. Here's I'm gonna go through it. I'm gonna go through the data. I looked through this. I actually did research for this podcast for once. In 2018, it doesn't matter because that was the championship season. So I'm throwing that year out. 2019, he was straight up bad in January. He had like 3 goose eggs in a row. And then busted out with 29. You remember this game? We were like,
this game, yeah.
29 versus Marquette, versus Marcus Howard's led Marquette.
Yes.
And scored in double figures in 6 of the last 8 games of that season. And that's 19 with Eric Paschal and Phil Booth.
Yeah.
So like he was definitely like down the line in terms of expectations. Yeah. In 2020, he did have actually pretty consistent production even though it was the COVID shortened year. I think there was a lot that kind of got lost and forgotten in that season. But he scored in double figures in 6 of his 9 last games. And had a very good season starting in mid-January. In 2021 was terrible to start the season.
Really
terrible to start the season. He got into gear in mid-January. He put up like 20 against Seton Hall in mid-January last season. And then for the final 16 games, he scored in double figures in 13 of them and averaged over 15 a game after Colin went down, and was one of the leading scorers and key reasons why that team made the Sweet 16. So he's averaging 10 and 6 right now. But point being is we are now into Jermaine Samuels land.
I feel like we need a name for it. We should
like
I don't know. Jermaine's Jermaine's transition. We'll have to come up with this for the next podcast. If any of our listeners have
talking about
ideas,
Jermainuary?
Jermaine.
That's good.
Jermaine, I like that. I like that. But it's not really good because it's really February. It's really February. Oh man.
That's Samuel.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, I think you're spot on. Last year in particular was really interesting because you obviously mentioned abysmal. He was shooting like less than 20% from 3. And I remember checking the stats at the end of the year, being like, I wonder where he ended up. He ended up shooting, I believe it was over 40% from 3, which is obviously a really good clip. So yes, that trajectory, totally get on it. I hope you're right. I'm definitely not banking on it this year. We'll see how it plays out. If you are right, I mean, awesome. Like we're in great shape, but I can't count on Jermaine. I've learned not to count on Jermaine.
2 more narratives. The first is refereeing. We have to talk about this relative to the Xaiver game, but also versus like the Big East in general. So there's been like a whole thing in college basketball this year whereby people are now mad at the refs for not calling enough fouls. That's been like a thing. Like the fouls are down on the season, like lower than ever before. We are a record low of like fouls being called in college basketball. And now even like Jay Billis is like, this is bad. Like you can't have it. Like you have to call fouls when there's fouls. Like there needs to be consistency, but all this stuff. Watching the Big East, you wouldn't fucking know that because the Big East has been an absolute ref show across the conference landscape throughout this entire season. Like it's been a joke. There was like 3 games in a row, and specifically in that Xaiver game, I thought we got straight up hosed by the refs in that game. Like there was like 3 phantom travel calls called on like Colin throughout the game. And then the worst of them all, the most egregious call that I've seen this season against Villanova. Caleb Daniels gets the ball and proceeds to get absolutely
terrible.
Run over by Paul Scruggs, who was sitting with 4 fouls. And Caleb, because he got knocked over by like, a 6'3", like 200 plus pound guy, falls over and gets called for a walk. What the fuck?
That was a really bad one. I was sitting on my couch and literally yelled, "What the fuck?" And my wife was like, "Excuse me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
really bad.
So bad. That was just one of them. But like they were like anticipating calls underneath, going up for, all of that stuff. It was crazy. Capstone on the narrative is this week, Seton Hall played at Marquette, and Seton Hall literally lost because of the referees.
Yeah.
Calling an absolutely terrible call, which absolutely could have been a foul the other direction, flagrant the other direction for an elbow to the face by the Marquette player into the Seton Hall guy, leaned into him and elbowed him in the face as he was going up. All that being said, this has been a constant theme throughout the season. Every game, you look on Twitter, the Big East Twitter sphere, the Big East needs to get control of their referees because it is terrible.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about this in years past really at all. Like, maybe there's a game here, there's a game there, but I think we've broadly stayed away from that narrative. I don't like talking about it all that much because it's one of those things you can't control all that much, and it's it ebbs and flows game to game. But the fact that it keeps coming up is very strange. So it's a fair point.
All right, final narrative point. We have our point counterpoint. Point counterpoint. Rob and I are going to debate.
Yeah.
Rob, what's your thesis?
All right. My thesis is we are not a good 3-point shooting team, which I would say actually which concerned me a lot prior to about the past 3 games. But as our strategy has shifted a little bit, concerns me a little bit less as we move forward in the season. But that is still my assertion that we in general are not a good 3-point shooting team. I believe we are currently shooting 35% from the 3-point line across the season, which is fine. The reason I would say we're not a good 3-point shooting team is that of 10 of our 17 games, we have shot under 35%. That's my point 1. I don't know if you want to go like counterpoint.
Yeah, I'll counterpoint this.
Yeah. My
counterpoint is that we are going to be a good 3-point shooting team.
What? That's ridiculous. That's like, I don't really want to argue this. So I'm going to argue some theoretical that I don't.
No, you're saying we're not a good 3-point shooting team. So in your mind, we're just that's who we are. That's part of our identity. I'm saying that
you're saying it doesn't matter.
I'm saying it doesn't. It does matter. I just think that we aren't there yet. Like we haven't graduated there yet. And I'll bring up another year. 2015, 2016 didn't look like they were a great 3-point shooting team, and then all of a sudden they were a very good 3-point shooting team by the end of that season. I think that that's where this team is headed. I think we are a good 3-point shooting team. They just haven't gone through the net yet. And so I think that we're going to regress to mean. That's what I think is going to happen. That's my thesis. I have a couple of thoughts behind that. I think that free throws, which we brought up earlier in the podcast, I think that if we're making 90% of our free throws, 90% plus of our free throws, and then on the season, 80% plus of our free throws, that means we can shoot the basketball. And it's just a matter of from distance, they got to go in. So that's one.
Yeah. So I will say that's great that you would love to see us turning it around. However, we've been trending downwards in terms of our shooting percentage. Of our last 10 games that we've played, in 6 of those games, we've shot less than 30%. And we've had some real clunkers from some of our better shooters, including Mr. Colin Gillespie, who just against Xaiver shot 2 for 11 from 3-point land. So if we're going to turn it around, that's fine, but we actually have to bottom out and start the upward trajectory before we can even go there. Because right now the evidence isn't pointing in the right direction.
All of that being said, Rob, we're 55th in the nation in 3-point field goal percentage, which is
that after today?
Yes.
Okay. Because we were like 100 and something before today.
And we know that Caleb, Colin, and Justin can all shoot the ball well. We've seen it historically. In addition to that, Antoine and Dixon have shown that they can make threes. And then, Slater and Samuels, if they come on, are the guys who were X factors on that front. But every position can shoot the 3 ball on this team.
So fact,
I think that we will be a good 3-point shooting team.
Fun fact, Colin is shooting above his career average for the season. Already.
That's a very fun fact.
It's not it's an unfun fact. It's an unfun fact. It's not great. So look, I guess my takeaway from all this is I'm glad you're optimistic. And look, if what we're talking about is basically two 3-pointers go in a game 3 more 3-pointers go in a game, it's a very different narrative. It's a very different box score than we're looking at game to game. And I think it definitely changes stuff. And all it takes is one guy to have that, right? Like Justin picks it up, makes literally one more game. Colin makes one more game. And then I think this talk track starts to change. But I just don't have the evidence of it. Today was great. It was very much an exception. I just think we shot over 60% or something like that from 3, which is great. We should do that more often.
Yeah, I really like when that happens.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. But yeah, it's going to take some work.
All right, fair enough. Let's do some awards. Then we got a big section coming up.
Yeah, we got to go. We're running slow.
All right, Alpha Dog of the week. I want to start there. Justin. Yeah, I think I got to stick with Justin. It sucks because I thought Eric played great against Xaiver, 15-10, another 14-5 versus Butler. Colin had 21 and 17 this week in his 2 games, but man, Moore was so good.
He's on fire. He's just like game to game, just fucking crushing it. I love it.
Yeah. And on top of that, one thing I've noticed of late, you notice that Colin is playing off the ball more. Moore is leading. Moore has graduated into the lead guard role. What I think is 1 and 2 during this run that we've been on of late, Moore has been the best defensive player on the team. Like Moore's everywhere. He's absolutely everywhere, blocking shots. He's absolutely everywhere. He's playing incredible, out of his mind defensively. It actually seems like he's having more fun playing defense than offense, which is crazy because he's also taking like a lion's share of the shots and dribbling the ball a lot. So Moore has become just the absolute most critical guy on this team in a lot of ways. Obviously, Colin is the guy. It's Colin's team, but Colin is letting Moore step into that role a lot more. Colin's trying to hunt for shots a little bit more and kind of hunt for his looks and being aggressive off the bounce, etc. Because he knows he's got Justin there all the time. So
we need more.
I agree. I think Moore's the alpha dog of the week. Again, I think that's a back-to-back for Justin there. The Shaq Fit man play of the week. I'm not sure I can think of one. The one that comes to mind is Justin's end one at the end of the Xaiver game. As that was, I think, the final, that was the final dagger. That was the final, last push that we needed to win that game. So I think I'm going to go with that and give a double award to Moore.
I think I'll go with, it wasn't all that meaningful, but Caleb had a really nice slam at the start in the first half of the game today. So I'm going to go with that one. Just more of a classic. It was actually similar to the dunk that he had a week or so ago, where he was coming in off the side. Just went up, nice 2-hand, pretty much threw it down. A little bit of contesting there. So I'll give mine to Caleb just to mix things up a little bit.
I'll give the fans, you can argue with us because I feel like I'm forgetting a Dixon play in the Xaiver game, but if you think we're terribly wrong on this, let us know.
It's tough to get a Dixon Shaq Fit man play of the week just because his hops are really generally not that good. He doesn't elevate all that much. So it's hard to get excited about. He had the one that we talked about where he came down the lane, had a little momentum, so he was able to get into the air. Generally not his game though.
Yeah. And the pass the fucking ball award of the week. I just give to Butler. It was so bad.
I think we've strayed away from this. I'm giving mine to Samuels. That Xaiver game, that's terrible. You got to do better. All
right, fine. I can agree with that. You know what, Brian, you can put me down as saying Samuels as well. We talked about it enough before. I think it's right. I think you're right. You convinced me.
All right, let's go.
So we're gonna launch real quick. If you didn't listen to last week's pod, listen to it because we did a really good Big East breakdown. But I'm just going to give a quick summary as we jump into a national outlook because we are going to focus this pod on the national outlook. So quick Big East summary here as to where everything stands. You have your first tier, which is us, and I'm going to go with Providence. I'm going to put them in the first tier with us just because they only have one loss, but they haven't played because of their COVID pause. Tier 2. These are teams that are going to make the NCAA tournament comfortably. UConn, Seton Hall, and Xaiver are all going to comfortably make the NCAAs this season. So you got 5 teams that are definitely locks to get in there. And then you have your bubble teams, Creighton, Marquette, and St. John's. St. John's on the very low end of that. Creighton and Marquette much more likely to get in. St. John's has to go on a heater to get into the NCAAs. They, at this point, don't look like an NCAA tournament team at all, but they're also not at the bottom tier of the Big East either. And then tier 4 is the teams that are not good, but you got to watch out because, if you play them away, it could be a trap game. It's just DePaul and Butler. And I toggled with making Georgetown not applicable to this tuning
put Georgetown in the bottom. They stink.
Yeah. So
They're
Georgetown
fucking terrible.
Georgetown's not applicable. So
Georgetown lost to Butler by like 15 or something. They just lost to St. John's today by a
19.
large margin as well.
19, but it didn't do it justice. It was total end-to-end blowout.
That team is a fucking mess.
Yes.
Absolute mess.
It's really, really bad. And Ewing's been on a COVID pause.
Yeah.
They're getting coached by an assistant.
He's probably like, I got COVID. I don't want to deal with this shit. They're like, hey, coach, you can come back. It's like, nah, still tested positive. Sorry.
Yeah.
Long
be positive
COVID.
forever.
Yeah.
He's waiting for the next wave.
Yeah. I got the new variant.
So
the Ewing variant.
So but that is just basically a little teaser for go listen to our last podcast. Nothing has really shifted since the last podcast. Seton Hall lost 2 games this week,
yeah.
But the at DePaul is a trap game, which I mentioned, and the Marquette game has a massive asterisk on that game. So
unfortunately, the committee doesn't look at asterisks. Like
I understand that.
That's a 2-loss week.
I understand that, but they're still going to make the NCAA tournament, so I'm not worried about it.
I agree.
They still stay in the same tier.
Yeah.
All right. National outlook, guys. This week we've had the college football championship that's out of the way. College football is behind us. The NBA and NHL are in the midseason doldrums. No one gives a shit about them right now. Right now, it's college hoops and the NFL. And guess what? If you're an Eagles fan listening to this podcast, your team's out. If you're a Jets fan, you're a Giants fan listening to this podcast, your team's out. So we've covered most of the Nova Nation.
As a Steelers fan, they're still in it, shockingly. And right now, they're leading the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right. So, but most of the Nova Nation is no longer having a rooting interest in the playoffs at this point in time. So with that being said, we can move on, and college basketball should be your focus. So we are 8 weeks away from a bracket. We're 8 weeks, guys.
Pretty crazy.
Like people are thinking to themselves, now it's still early in the season. No, it's not. No, it's not. We're like beyond the half point of this season. There are 8 weeks left. We are running towards March Madness, absolutely steamrolling to March Madness. The season is flying by. At this point, like the algorithms like KenPom and stuff like that are dumping out all the preseason data that they had built in to try and like regulate, etc. It's all going by the wayside. We are now fully into this season. So with that being said, if you looked at the top 25 and said, what's happened? This has been an absolutely wild week. So the one thing that looked pretty certain going into this week was that Baylor was the best team in college basketball. There were no losses, but they played good opponents, unlike USC, who had no losses coming into this week. And they had, but they played like garbage teams. So you look at it and you say, Baylor looks to be the national championship favorite again. Baylor loses twice at home this week, once to a ranked team, once to a terrible Oklahoma State team. So you have that. UCLA, Oregon comes out of nowhere. They were ranked in the top 15 to start the season and lost a bunch of games. They come out of nowhere, knock off USC and UCLA this week. We're 3 and 5 respectively. UCLA loses another game at Stanford. The top 5 is absolutely topsy-turvy at the moment. Where that leaves us is that there's 2 teams that are vying to be number 1 tomorrow. At the time you listen to this podcast, you'll probably know who the number 1 team in the country is. But right now there's an argument going on. Should it be Gonzaga, who the computers favor, who obviously was the higher ranked team coming into the season, or Auburn, who has 1 loss to UConn, ironically enough, and has looked absolutely the part of one of the best teams in the country.
Did you say that again?
Auburn has looked the part of one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah.
Just following instructions here.
So my Apple Watch went a little haywire there. But they've been red hot too. So people are split on this about who's going to be number 1. all in all, it doesn't really, like, you might say, oh, what do I care about the AP top 25? Like, all it matters is that you're looking at, like, okay, when we're going to start putting a bracket together, and we're going to dig into this from Villanova's perspective in just a little bit. Like, you want to know who the top 4 teams are, because it's going to impact seeding in the NCAA tournament. Like, those top 4 teams might, who's going to be in the top seed in the East, for example. A team like an Auburn could be a team that gets to the top seed line and ends up in the East bracket. Why does that matter? We are playing, the Eastern Regional this year is in Philadelphia. It's at the Wells Fargo Center. We have limited the number of Wells Fargo Center games this year to 3. That's the maximum you can play in an arena as a home team to be allowed to play in that arena in the NCAA tournament. So we've limited that. Today was one of those games. We got 2 more coming up versus Seton Hall and UConn. But that's the maximum number of games you could play. That's the Eastern Regional site, not the pod site. There was some confusion on Twitter about that. It's the regional site. The last time the Philadelphia hosted the Eastern Regional was 2016. Now, obviously, we won the championship that year. But if you remember, there was a lot of controversy that went around because Villanova was like the 5th 1 seed. Everyone was like, oh, Villanova is good enough to make it, whatever. But they left us off. They put us as the 2 seed. So we were like the first 2 seed in that year. We thought, okay, we're going to be in the East with whoever we're going to be in the East with. Well, guess what? Even though the rules allow for it, the tournament committee said it's not fair that Villanova would be the 2 seed in a region where the 1 seed has to travel further to get there. So 1 seed in that region was North Carolina. They flipped us and Xaiver that year and sent us to the South, which is why we played in Louisville, which was much closer to Xavier's arena and much closer to Xavier's home, and flipped us to Louisville and moved Xaiver to Philadelphia. All is forgiven because we went on and won the championship, but that was a big deal at the time. That was a big deal that like all of a sudden Villanova did not get the Eastern Regional. What the fuck? We did everything that we were supposed to do. We played 3 games or less in the Wells Fargo Center. We limited that. Because of that, we didn't get all that revenue, etc. We didn't play that many games there. We followed all the rules, and the NCAA tournament basically protected the team that was going to be there. Who are the candidates to be in the Eastern Regional? You have Duke, you have Auburn, and Villanova this year are probably the 3 best Eastern-based teams that could wind up in the Eastern Regional. Any 1 seed can wind up. They'll move anyone anywhere, but like the 1 seed gets preference. And if the 1 seed is not us, my point is very simple. If it's Duke as the 1 seed in the Eastern Regional, Villanova is not going to be in the Eastern Regional. We're not going to be in Philadelphia. There's no way in Coach K's final swan song season, they're going to put Villanova as the 2 seed in Duke's bracket in Philadelphia at their home court. It's not going to happen. You imagine the outcry that'll pour out from that. So
poor Coach K.
Yeah. Poor Coach K. He hasn't won enough. It's about time something good happens to him. But all of this matters kind of like, and as teams are jockeying for position, because yes, the NCAA goes by the net, right? Which is their like computer driven thing. It succeeded the RPI. It's much better than the RPI. It's not perfect. And it's a little bit cloudy as to how they calculate it, but it's clearly better than what the RPI was. So they go by the net and they go by other like things, eye test, etc. What factors in though, is that like people say, oh, it doesn't matter, but it matters is media and like all of that like kind of like flow leading up to the tournament. Like they're not going to just pick the top 4 in the net if one of the top 4 is like a team that's ranked number 20. Like it doesn't happen. So you have to have like that kind of like wide based understanding that this is one of the top 4 teams in the country to get that top 4 seed. So as many people who say, oh, the AP poll doesn't matter, it matters, guys. Yeah. It absolutely matters. Like, yes, is it possible that you lose a game late and the rankers drop you down a peg as a result of that, and you slip to 8, but you still wind up in the 1 line? Absolutely, that's possible. It just doesn't happen that often that it plays out like that. So all of that being said, it's like critical at this stage of the game, kind of where we sit in the rankings. so there's a bunch of teams to kind of go over here, but I'll just try and keep it quick. After the top 5. So you have Arizona, Purdue, and Duke, who look to be the teams that are going to replace Baylor, UCLA, and USC in the top 5. They look like the teams that are primed to jump into that. Purdue took some lumps earlier on in the Big Ten, but they seem to be getting right. Duke had a good week after losing to Miami. Arizona has been really good. Arizona is one of the only one-loss teams left in the country. Them, Auburn, and Colorado State are the only one-loss teams left in the country.
Yes, Colorado State.
So Arizona is off to an excellent start on their year. So I mean, Arizona definitely a team that could wind up on that one line as well.
They really have not beaten anybody though.
Did they get UConn? Did they beat UConn in their Turkey tournament? I want to say that they. Do I have that wrong?
No, they didn't, because they had a lot of their good games canceled or postponed. UCLA postponed, USC postponed.
Okay.
They haven't beaten anybody.
All right. So Arizona's got,
they've got work to do.
They got some work to do. I agree. Fine. But then you have Kansas, who looked really good. They hung on against Iowa State at Allen Fieldhouse, which is not great, but Iowa State was ranked 15, so that's a top 15 game.
This Bill Self guy's a good coach.
Yeah, but then they walloped a pretty good West Virginia team at home. They beat them by like 28 or something like that in Lawrence this week. So with Baylor losing 2 in a row, it looks like the Big 12 is going to run through Lawrence, and the Big 12 is so good that whoever wins the Big 12 is going to get a 1 seed in the NCAAs. Yeah. On the other hand, Michigan State has fallen off the wagon. Michigan State started with a couple losses, then started to build a good resume and feasted on really bad teams, and then they now just lost to Northwestern at home, which is really terrible. So who's going to wind up in the top 10 after this week? We've had a lot of topsy-turvy. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, Villanova's got to wind up in the top 10, right? Like they beat Xaiver, and then they crushed Butler." I'm not so fast. I think Villanova is going to wind up at around 11. Houston, who has lost some players but has still won, was number 11. I think they're going to jump to number 10 if I had to guess. Wisconsin has had a good week. They beat Ohio State. I think Wisconsin was a step ahead of us. I think they were number 13 going into this week. I think Wisconsin jumps Houston because the injury that I just talked about, but we don't. I think it's going to wind up that like Wisconsin's at 9, Houston's at 10, Villanova's at 11. And then I think Kentucky, who absolutely obliterated Tennessee, put up 107 on them at Rupp yesterday. I think Kentucky jumps into the top 12. So you're starting to look at that top 12 on the year and say, okay, who is that going to be? I think you're starting to see that take shape. The other teams to look out for that could come up from behind is Illinois, is the one team that I really like. They're number 25. They lost a lot of games early in the season, but they didn't have Kofi Coburn, who is one of the best players in the country. And now they're off to an undefeated start in a very loaded Big Ten. If Illinois continues their winning ways and goes on to win the Big Ten, they're going to wind up on the 1 line. So Illinois has got a chance because the committee will discount losses from injured players or injured or out players if you've convinced them that you're good with them. So Illinois is a team that can kind of come out of nowhere, wind up 1, 2, 3 line. They were projected to be very good to start the year and got off to a rocky start without Coburn. All right. Moving on, that's kind of like a whole setup to kind of say, okay, where do we stand now with this bracketology thing? How do we figure 8 weeks from now, what's the bracket going to look like? What's Villanova's ceiling? What could Villanova fall to, et cetera? Look, we're not going to project an implosion. We're also not going to project Villanova goes undefeated. If Villanova does go undefeated, we will be a 1 seed. I'll stamp that.
But that won't happen. But yes,
that's not going to happen. But could even with some losses, Villanova wind up on the 1 line? I think the answer to the question is yes. But it's going to be tough, and those losses have to be like good losses.
Yeah, I wouldn't bank on it. I think we're talking about a far-fetched scenario here.
Yes and no. Here's the thing. Most years when you're going through and Villanova's going through this Big East schedule, etc., like the Big East is not good enough to validate that losses in the conference are validatable. Like, oh, okay, yeah, it's fine. You lost at UConn. Like, whatever. Like, we haven't had that in the past.
We don't have a good win. I think it boils down to that. If you pick up more losses in the Big East, what's the win you're pointing to? You know, like one seeds have good wins. We've got some okay wins.
Rob, we're one of 4 teams. We're one of a handful of teams in the country that have 4 quad 1 wins.
Yeah, that's fine. Like the committee at the end of the day is going to say, look, have these guys beaten a top 5 or top 10 team? Nope. We haven't, and we won't have that opportunity either.
Yeah, I get your point. I just think, look, the committee's going to look at it and say, okay, quad 1 wins. We're 4-4 in quad 1 right now. We've won at Xaiver. We won neutral versus Tennessee. We won at Seton Hall. And we have opportunities to pick up wins at Providence or versus UConn, etc. That's what I'm talking about. The Big East has ample opportunities. So yeah, you lose a game here or there to Providence or a UConn going down the stretch, but you pick up a win versus those teams too. Like it's not. This is
totally falling flat for me. There's no quality win to point to. That's a win against 16 against 17. That does nothing for me. At the end of the day. When we're talking about a 1 seed. We're talking about a 1 seed, not like, oh, there's a lot of nice quad 1 wins. Who cares? Do you have a top 10 win? No, you don't have a top 10 win, and you picked up some losses against some crap teams. Forget it. Done.
Rob,
moving on.
No, not moving on. Not moving on. You can't just say moving on. It's not the rules. What does committee look at? Go back to like bracket like principles, right? They look at the net, which is we're number 6 in the net right now. They look at the strength of schedule. We are top 3 to 5 in strength of schedule. Per Ken Palm, we're number 2 in strength of schedule right now. As I said, we're 4-4 in quad 1. Our quad 1 losses come 3 at away and 1 on a neutral court, all versus teams that are projected towards the 1, 2, and 3 line. Yes, they're lost opportunities, but guess what? These teams are going to lose. These teams are going to lose. Purdue is in the Big Ten.
I want somebody to look up and see the last time there was a 1 seed that did not have 1 top 10 win the entire year. I bet it hasn't happened in the past 10 years.
We didn't do that. You didn't do that.
We did. I didn't do that. I didn't do the check. I'm betting that's what it is. And that to me is why this is falling flat.
So here's the deal. Rob, to your point, if we've already done enough damage to our resume that we're not going to be on the 1 line, barring winning out, then we will not be in Philadelphia bracket, right? Like that's kind of like the point here to take away. The big takeaway is that like if you want that Philadelphia bracket, Villanova has to play like lights out for the rest of the season. Like probably can't take more than 2 losses.
Yeah.
There have been 7 lost teams who have been 1 seeds. That's happened before. Like that could happen, but like that's a tough hill to climb. We have the resume, the strength of schedule, et cetera, to back it up, but there's got to be a lot of wins. We got to win a lot of numerical wins, like just got to load them up. To your point, Rob, it's unlikely. I think the more likely right now, if you look around the bracketology and what I look at Lunardi, I look at Jerry Palm, who I think is a step better than Lunardi. The one thing about Lunardi that's good is that he kind of updates his bracket like every day. So that like makes it like nice to follow because you could kind of see an ebb and flow along the lines of the season. Whereas like I'm looking at Jerry Palm right now, we've had a crazy week in college basketball. He hasn't updated it since like Thursday. Mike DeCourcy, same thing. He's the guy who does it for Fox. The one other site that I point out is Bracket Matrix. Is really cool. They basically take all the bracketologists and put them together, and it's like a wisdom of crowds thing. So where does that leave us right now? Is Villanova is currently the top on Bracket Matrix. Villanova is currently the top team on the 3 line. So considered to be like the 9th best resume in college basketball, trailing Kansas, Purdue, Duke, Arizona, Gonzaga, Auburn, and Baylor. To Rob's point, Arizona has a lot of numerical wins, maybe needs a little bit of bolster to their actual quality of victories. But there's still a lot of basketball to be played. Big 12 teams are going to lose a lot of games. Big 10 teams are going to lose a lot of games, and SEC teams are going to lose games. So there's definitely going to be, this is not going to be like a season where, other than Gonzaga, you're going to have teams that have like 3 losses coming into bracket time. This is going to be a season where you have 5-6 lost teams getting 1 seeds as they go into March.
Yeah, it's going to be tough just looking at those teams, considering we've lost to a few of them already. So
absolutely, but we don't have a loss to like a Rutgers.
Yes, it's true.
So like, who have you beat? Who have you lost to? It's a little bit of a juggling.
So we're on a 3 right now. Where do you think we ultimately end up?
I think the most likely scenario, and this is building in some renewed expectations, is I think a 2. I think we actually end up on the 2 line. I think there's enough chaos in the other conferences that some teams fall back that are currently ahead of us. But I don't think that we get to the 1 line. I think Duke ends up as the 1 seed in the East. And the reason why I think that, they have that win against Gonzaga, which is big. The other thing that Duke has is Coach K's last season, which is shitty to say, but also the ACC is bad. The ACC is really, really bad. It's like good. Very uncannily bad. Like the ACC is like a distant 5th or 6th in terms of best conferences in the country right now. Like the best conferences is like the Big 12 is kind of in a league of its own. And you have the Big 10, Big East, and SEC are all kind of jumbled in after that. So I think Duke's going to clean up in the ACC as the season progresses and just not have a lot of losses and end up on the 1 line. Yeah. So that's kind of how I see them. That's kind of how I see that playing out. And as a result of that, what I say before, if Duke is the number 1 in the East, Villanova will not be in the Eastern Regional. That's how I think it's going to play out. What do you think?
Obviously, based on my assertions just now, do not think we'll end up on the 1 line. The 2 would be nice. I think we'll probably pick up a couple losses along the way that, unfortunately, I don't think will be like great losses. So I'm guessing here, I think we'll probably end up right about where we are right now, which is probably the top 3 seed. Which isn't a terrible spot to be, as you said. Like if we're not in the East, kind of what does it matter almost? So we'll see. Yeah, so I'd say, if I'm guessing, I'd say 3 seed.
The good news though is that the team that's hot is going to win this season. I don't think that there is a blow you away team in college basketball. So if we're 3 and we're hot, like like it's funny because like you say, oh, like you look at the team and you're like, oh man, what happened earlier in the season, et cetera. And you're like, this team can't make a Final Four. Like I got to readjust my expectations, yada, yada, yada. I don't know if that's necessarily the case this year because there isn't like that, like Baylor and Gonzaga, like last year that you have to aspire to. If you're not on that level, you're not getting there. Right. Like, so like, it's kind of like a weird year in that we can do that. And this is
I don't know. I'm not there yet. I'm not
saying I'm not saying I'm 100% there that this is a Final Four team. I'm saying this is a team that could end up being a Final Four team because there isn't a great team in college basketball. And I go back to we were up. We like went into overtime at UCLA. We were up 10 against Purdue. Like we could have won those games. Like we didn't, obviously. But we could have won those games. So like Villanova did show that they can hang with teams. So I'm still saying that I don't think that there's a runaway favorite to win the championship this year.
Yeah, I agree. There's not a runaway favorite, but to me, it's a little too much flip-floppiness in my mind. Like we went from this is a Final Four team to holy shit, we got smoked to like we're back on like we could feasibly do it if we get hot. I'm like, yeah, sure. If you get lightning hot, you can absolutely win a title. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I'm not. All I'm saying is when you actually put pen to paper on the bracket and who the teams are and what's going on around the national sphere, having done the research, Rob.
This is how people lose money every March. Yeah, when I put it on paper, they can make a run. Come on, ridiculous.
Rob, I did my own research, and this is what I did my own research.
Did your own research.
You didn't catch the COVID joke.
Yeah, no, I missed it.
You didn't catch the COVID joke the first time. I didn't lay it out clear enough.
Oh, terrible.
All right.
Anyway.
That's kind of the national look around. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of keep that refreshed as each week goes along from here on out, because as I mentioned, we're 8 weeks to the bracket. So time to giddy up, guys.
Yeah.
All right. We have 2 games coming up this week.
Let's do it real quick. Let's breeze through
real
it.
quick. Good news is we can, because there's only one game to really talk about.
Yikes.
We welcome Marquette to the Pavilion on Wednesday. And as much as I'd love to talk shit about their coach is no longer Wojo. Shaka Smart is in his first year as the head coach of Marquette. I don't have anything against Shaka Smart. I liked him more when he was bald. I think he looks ridiculous, not bald, but that's neither here nor there. And they're off to a nice start. They have put themselves on the bubble, probably on the right side of the bubble at the moment. And one thing that John Fanta, every time I've watched him on a call or talking about Marquette, is saying this team has an identity when they did not in the past. So Marquette has an identity. What's that from? Kind of comes from the coach. They play that havoc style defense. They're run and gun. They play quick. They get you going. They are 38th overall in tempo compared to us, who's 350th in tempo. So there's definitely a clash of style that's going to happen in this game. And one of the keys to the game is, can Villanova slow Marquette down and also handle the basketball and not turn the ball over? One overlooked thing as we've gone on this nice run here is that we've kind of been a little bit loose with the basketball at times, relative to what you'd expect a Colin Gillespie-led team to be of late. So just something to look out for as we go in. They're playing that havoc, speed you up style.
They're back to running that, because it's interesting, because like Shaka Smart, he was known for that at VCU. Then he went down to Texas, got all these top recruits, like kind of went away from it basically.
It's not the same. Not the same that it was at VCU, okay. But there's definitely an identity to it.
Yeah, Marquette's an interesting team. It's funny looking at this roster. I'm used to knowing Marquette in and out. Just tons of new faces this year. This team is made up of people you probably will not know. They've got a bunch of transfers, a bunch of freshmen and redshirt freshmen who are leading this team. So their leading scorers, Justin Lewis, who is, I believe, a redshirt freshman, and Daryl Morsell, who's a grad transfer from Maryland, played 4 years at Maryland, is a really solid player. Those are their top guys. After that, I literally basically didn't know anybody on this team. They had a lot of players transfer out at the end of the season as well, too. One of our favorites, or least favorites, Theo John, left the program. He's a Dookie now. But anyway, a lot of new people there. Don't expect you as a casual fan to really know them, but that's okay. You'll have some time to get to know them over the coming years. But yeah, it's good to have Shaka Smart as a coach in the Big East. That Marquette role is always a pretty big one and can be a pretty good jumping off point. It's always been a really interesting spot to see where people go from there in terms of their next step in their career. So we'll see what Shaka Smart makes it. He's a Wisconsin guy, as we had talked about before, so he's kind of back home, which is cool.
They do run a lot of players. So that's another thing, is that like not a ton of players have established this like lead guy identity.
Yeah.
Because they really play a team game. They play like they have like 11 guys who average over 8 minutes or something like that. Like they run a lot. So they're going to run a deep bench. As I said, they play really fast. They play up tempo. It's going to be a battle of style. That being said, we're at home, and Villanova's a far superior team. This is a game that Ken Pom has us winning by 12 at home. I think how this game plays out, if I had to guess, I think that we're going to get shocked a little bit by their style, and it's going to take us a little bit of time to settle into our game and kind of force their will, because we haven't played an up-tempo team in a few weeks, like a truly up-tempo team. I don't mean like, Xaiver plays a bit up-tempo, like we haven't played someone who's more up-tempo since really Baylor, who's really up-tempo. So with that, I think what you're going to see is us get a little bit, like, take a punch on the chin early on. And then I think we recover. And I think what ends up happening is we end up winning by like 9. I have us actually not beating the Ken Pom spread on this game, even though we're at home. So I have us winning by 9. I think the game will be played a little bit quicker. So I would expect to see more points on the board for them and us. I think this is going to be like a 79-70 game.
Yeah, I like it. I think I think we'll struggle to adjust a little bit at the outset. It'll be close. We'll break it up. And though this Marquette team has been really up and down through the season, they don't have a lot of noteworthy wins that they can point to. So I think we'll get this one done without.
They did beat Illinois, but again, we talked about it. Illinois didn't have Coburn.
Kofi, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other game this week is Georgetown. Here's what you need to know about Georgetown. They're bad.
They're terrible.
They're really bad. They're really bad.
They're 6-8. They're absolutely abysmal. Or 8-6. Sorry, I don't know. Whatever it's one. Doesn't even fucking matter.
It's at Georgetown, but there's gonna be nobody there. There was like 10 fans in the stands versus when they played Butler. It's an absolute joke. Look, there's Rob, to your point. If we lose versus Georgetown, we don't even deserve a 3 seed. Like it's that level bad. They're that bad.
It's not good. I always feel bad going on Casual Hoya and kind of reading the comments there. It's like, man, the fans are just so depressed.
Wasteland.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, it's almost reached like sicko territory where they're like, how bad can this get?
Yeah, I think Patrick's done at the end of the year.
It's going to be hard to recover from this. I mean, he wins the Big East tournament last year and then just loses everybody. I just don't. How do you not hold the team together after you win a championship? I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Anyway. Look, I mean, Georgetown. This game could be a 30-point game at Georgetown.
It should be. Absolutely.
Ken Palm has us as 14-point favorites. To me, that's kind of like. There's just like limitations.
Yeah,
it's algorithm limitations. It's kind of how I view that.
It's a big Trey Patterson game, really. It really should be.
There you go, Brian. One for the road.
Messed up, bro.
All right.
Oh, God.
That's it for the podcast. So big bracketology breakdown. We're going to stay on top of that as we go through the season, see where Villanova falls. Rob, very skeptical of our 1 seed outlook. Me, a little bit less skeptical, but still not terribly optimistic about a 1 seed, but still.
Chris Blow with the Winds Bilotti is what I'm going to call you.
That's right. It's a horrible nickname.
It's really bad.
But that's all we got today. So thanks everyone for listening. And as always, let's go Nova.